After years of being far away from his hometown for work and study reasons, Tuma finally comes back home. However, he feels like he has lost touch with all of his school friends ever since he left. Having no clue whatsoever of their whereabouts or what they're doing with their lives, he stands clueless of who to reach out to. But he remembers that his childhood friends, or in other words, his best friend Kyoko, is still in town and lives at her parents' house. Relief passes over him, since now at least he could see a familiar face and find out where his other classmates are and how her life is going so far. He recalls her feisty and lively personality that always used to get his head spinning. All the time she would scream at him and keep him on his toes, in a good way of course. Not to mention, her vibrant personality made her become very famous among the boys as well. So, he expects nothing less than for her to have had a few boyfriends by now, or maybe she's even married already. She must be a full-fledged woman by now, and Tuma prays in his heart that maybe puberty has made her a bit more feminine. With these thoughts in mind, he makes his way towards her house. But while walking, he sees her silhouette right in front of him, and recognizing his best friend, he calls out her name. A rather frightened and delicate girl turns around and catches Tuma's eye, and with a feeble and surprised voice, asks why he is here. Shock hits Tuma like a truck, and he can't wrap his head around what has happened to his dear old best friend. Her messed up pink hair, her weak voice, and overall worn out clothes go completely against her past personality. Tuma can't help but worry about her and if she's alright. In fact, what he had imagined in his mind of what Kyoko could have been is the direct opposite of what he's seeing before him. This is not the person he used to know. Tuma's mind can't grasp the real reason behind Kyoko's change, and he felt that it would be better if he should just sit and talk to her and understand from her perspective the reason behind the drastic change. Trying to get some answers, he decides to take her to the coffee shop that they would go to together in their childhood. But the frightened and timid Kyoko refrains from entering and tells him that she can't possibly enter since she has no money and prepares to leave. Tuma gets the idea that maybe she didn't have a job at the moment and instead offers to buy her coffee since a coffee wouldn't be that expensive and it's the least he could do for her. They sit together and Tuma prepares to ask her about what happened in her past, but he can plainly see that she was in no mood to talk and was very tense. He also notices her studded ears, the black mask covering her face, and her hair that has not been managed at all. And, well, the fact that she is immensely grown in many places. Tuma feels that she is frightened of him since she avoids eye contact and is always folding her arms around her chest, as if trying to protect herself from something that isn't even there. Thinking to himself, Tuma assumes that Kyoko herself must know what is wrong with her, and that she just isn't the same cheery and excited girl that she once was. The server rings the bell and their dessert is served. 2 parfaits are served to them, and Kyoko's eyes are filled with surprise as she eyes the delicious dessert sitting at an arm's distance from her. Tuma tells her how they both used to order parfait in the past and their love for it, so he ordered it for both of them. A bit shy, but happy to eat again, Kyoko agrees with him about her love for it. Tuma knew if he questioned her about the past and the events that led to who she is now, he might never get to meet her again, and his opportunity to get back with his best friend would be lost. Trying to make conversation, he tells her how hard it is to order the parfait as a single man alone, and that he is glad she chose to give him company. Kyoko replies that she feels like she isn't making any effort, and so their little meetup goes by as dryly as possible. But it doesn't bother our protagonist, since he is out for a mission, and that mission is to uncover the truth behind his friend's sudden change of personality. The sun sets over the horizon, and the two make their way out. Weirdly enough, Tuma doesn't feel bad that their conversation was dry and unproductive. He wasn't able to get the information that he wanted, and nor was Kyoko, feeling less scared than she was before. But before he could realize it, Kyoko's rejection and not planning to meet him again faded through his mind, and it seems like there could still be some hope, like a shining bright light in a dark empty tunnel. Maybe he could still get his friend back. Tuma tells her absent-mindedly that he would be around for a while and was hoping for a positive reply back from her, which luckily he does get back. Kyoko tells him that she would also be around, even though it's really logical that she doesn't have any other place to go, nor does she have a job that she would be busy in. She tells him hesitantly that she doesn't have any work to do, which is probably the only thing she has said so far, and also tells him that now she would be heading back home. Tuma recalls the past. Whenever the two would part ways during their school days, Kyoko would land a strong kick on her butt. At the time, he would find it absolutely annoying that she did it, but now that she's changed, Tuma actually misses it. Well, they both have become proper adults after all, is what he tells himself as he slowly makes his way towards his home. Kyoko stands behind and stares at Tuma with her wide eyes that after many years now glow of amazement and a slight touch of happiness. The wind pushes her hair away, little magical lights float around her, and we are met with the image of a rather happy Kyoko. Kyoko makes her way back home and opens the front door. Entering her rather messed up and out-of-place parents' house, she makes her way to her room. Taking off her pants, she throws them to one side of the room, and slowly also throws away her shirt to get into the shower. Scrubbing her body from left to right, Kyoko's dainty, delicate, but rather big body goes through a series of scrubs before she gets into the shower. The warm water washes off the soap and residue that is stuck to her soft body and forms bubbles on the shower floor. She recalls the farewell she just had a few hours ago with her childhood friend Tuma. Images of him waving his arm as he slowly makes his way away from her, his dark hair, his delicate way of talking to her, and their rather quiet but beautiful first meeting, where she gets to relive her past of eating parfait. The beautiful thoughts beat through her shocking pink-covered head as she sits on her bathroom floor, naked and happy. The steam covers her body, her hair wet and not tangled like they used to be. Kyoko lets her cheeks rest on her hands, and she starts blushing a crimson rose color, which perfectly complements her pink-colored hair. Looks like she must have had a wonderful day. The morning after Tuma returns to his parents' house, he sees rain pouring down through his room's window. The weather does not look favorable at all for our protagonist to leave his warm, comfy house and venture out. Planning to spend his day lounging around the house, he makes himself coffee and moves around with a book in hand. The sound of rain makes the house feel pleasant and even somewhat nostalgic. Guess he must be feeling nostalgia in the pit of his stomach ever since he came back to his hometown. He moves around in his room and looks out of his window, only to see Kyoko with an umbrella and a raincoat hanging around near the entryway. Tuma thinks maybe she has come to visit him, but hasn't made any attempts to enter their place or ring a bell. Which is nothing new, since she could be feeling hesitant to meet his parents and the meeting could become very awkward as well. Back in the past, she also used to avoid entering his house and would shout from outside to make poor Tuma race out of his own house. Seems like she hasn't entirely changed. Tuma takes out an umbrella, wears his raincoat, and with a smile on his face, leaves his house to talk to Kyoko. He greets her and tells her how he is bored and maybe the two should wander around somewhere and give each other company. The surprised but rather happy Kyoko happily agrees to go anywhere with him as she nods in agreement. For a reason Tuma can't understand, he feels very happy that he's able to meet Kyoko again, and also relieved that she looks a lot better than when he had met her a few days ago. Under the night sky and pouring rain, the two set off without any destination in mind or a known endpoint. This could pretty much look beautiful if the two were lovers and this was a romantic anime, but it isn't. As always, Kyoko is heavily concerned that no one notices her and hasn't taken off her mask throughout the walk. The reason behind her uneasiness and scared personality is still unknown to us as we progress further and further into the chapters. Kyoko looks left and right, hoping that no one comes too close to her and in return finds out about her. Thus, Tuma decides to go to a place that does not have a lot of people, and in this way makes her feel more comfortable. Tuma notices a karaoke place up ahead and asks Kyoko if she would like to go there. A bit hazed, but she reluctantly goes with him. It was still pouring outside, so they entered the karaoke room together. The room feels a lot better, warm and homely. However, Kyoko isn't feeling relaxed and wraps her arms around her chest again. Tuma recalls how many years it has been since they last went to a karaoke room together and enjoyed their hearts out. He remembers how she would drag him by the ear into the karaoke room when they were in high school. Sadly, times have changed, and Kyoko isn't the same cheerful and excited girl that he once knew. He watched her sit quietly on her side, not talking much and hardly even making an effort to make conversation with him, making him feel like she is a statue. Kyoko looks down, unable to make eye contact with Tuma, and blanks when it comes what to say to him. Tuma makes the move and asks her if she would like to sing something with him. Taken aback, Kyoko asks in a confused manner about what to sing. Tuma thinks to himself, is this girl for real? They are in a karaoke place, of course they should do some singing, if nothing else. In the end, they didn't get into the karaoke spirit, and instead of singing their hearts out, they ended up using the time to chat a bit. It's still confusing to us about what the two could possibly be chatting about. Kyoko isn't one to share a lot about herself, and is very much to herself. Finally, she starts talking, and asks Tuma if it's okay for him to be hanging out with her. A bit confused, he asks her why would it not be okay to hang out with her. Granted that she is a bit messed up and weird, but without a doubt we all know that Kyoko is really beautiful. Flustered from head to toe, Kyoko brings up the courage to tell him that since she is older and more mature now in multiple ways, if he has a girlfriend, she wouldn't be happy if she saw him hanging out with her. Not to mention she doesn't have a boyfriend, so it's completely fine if she hangs out with her alone in a karaoke room, where they aren't really karaokeing. The amount of courage it has taken her to say these lines is something we will never realize, but can see as she is turned rose pink from head to toe. Confused and now a bit pissed off as well, Tuma asks her what type of flighty person she thinks he is, and that too assumes that he has a girlfriend, when in fact he doesn't have a girlfriend or anything like that whatsoever. Kyoko gives him a small, embarrassed laugh back, but we could all see the excitement and happiness being emitted between her smile and her eyes. Telling Tuma that she doesn't think one bit bad of him at all, but deep down feeling a stomach full of butterflies. Tuma tells her that it wasn't the nicest response he expected from her, but he will let this one slide for now. Kyoko is busy fidgeting and nibbling on her fingers, which are also burning red out of embarrassment. Sweat continues to drip down her thighs and hands, even though it isn't very hot in the room. She apologizes for the half-hearted response and continues to apologize to him. Tuma, on the other hand, is a little relieved to hear that Kyoko doesn't have a boyfriend either, and maybe things could work out between them. Kyoko smiles, a happy smile, blushing from her cheeks and tiny, imaginative smoke being emitted from her nose. Guess someone's in love. With the whole relationship status out of the way, knowing that both of them are single, the two start talking to each other. Kyoko is much more communicative now, and is able to talk without reservations. It seems she was feeling uneasy this whole time, knowing that if Tuma was in a relationship, her being around would mess everything up for him and their friendship as well. Tuma loved the fact that Kyoko is now happily talking to him, except for one clear fact that makes him feel uncomfortable. She seems to be very close to him. The two have been close to each other ever since they were kids, and have been together through thick and thin. But for some reason, Tuma feels flustered that she is super close to him. He could feel himself tensing up. Suddenly, the room also starts feeling stuffy and hot to him as well, and he could feel Kyoko getting closer and closer to him. Kyoko slowly asks him if he doesn't have a girlfriend, but her words are cut short when the phone in the karaoke room starts to ring. Their time in the room has elapsed and they must leave to give it away to other customers. Just when things were progressing between these two, it had to be interrupted by the sound of a phone. The two make their way out of the room, and they see that the rain has stopped pouring, followed by a clear sky and mini birds flying. Tuma comments about how the rain has stopped, to which Kyoko agrees with him. But we all know that she still feels sad that her moment to ask him a certain question has elapsed, and she may not get the opportunity again anytime soon. The two make their way back after a very tense and rather hot few hours in the karaoke room. Kyoko and Tuma leave the karaoke room after a very heated and intimate moment with each other. She thinks to herself about how Tuma has always been that way ever since her childhood. He never looked like he would think twice about what he would say and was always carefree. Not to mention, he was very considerate about her feelings. Even now, he is the same as he ever was. While looking in the mirror, Kyoko stares back at her reflection and watches the tangled hair, the awful clothing that hasn't been managed at all, and finally the broken hair pieces that are still around her fingers. She stares at her reflection and thinks how her best friend hasn't aged much since the past, whereas she has become into a different person, not even one she could recognize. Negative thoughts fill poor Kyoko's mind, and she wraps herself around with a blanket and sorrows. Calling herself pathetic, along with a number of awful names, she reprimands herself for becoming this monster. She repeats these again and again, convincing herself that she would not show her face to Tuma again and would only hold him back from leading a happy, prosperous life. Moments later, she hears a buzzing sound on her phone, and she has received a message. Who could it possibly be? No one ever messages her this late. Picking up her phone, she realizes it's Tuma's message and remembers how they had exchanged numbers when they had met earlier, since he felt it would be easier to stay in contact that way. With trembling fingers and anxiety filling her up, Kyoko opens his message, where she reads something totally not what she had expected. Tuma thanks her for meeting him, and even asks her to meet him next Saturday, since he would be free then and they could go out somewhere. She stares at the message blankly for a few seconds, digesting what she has just read, unable to even grasp the moment. And then a big, happy, content smile forms on her delicate face. All her fears, all her anxiety suddenly is washed away. She could not have dreamed of being treated this way, and let alone by her childhood friend. Will Kyoko ask Tuma out, and will the two best friends get to take it to the next step? But more importantly, what trail of events have led Kyoko to end up so different that even Tuma could not recognize her? Friday evening has arrived, and that means their date is hours away from happening. Tuma, while working in his office, remembers Kyoko telling him that she doesn't have a job and is pretty much at home all the time, so he invites her for some drinks that evening. This would be their first time drinking after so many years of being apart in time and in personalities. Not getting distracted, he pushes the meetup thought aside and pays close attention to his work so he could easily wrap up everything before their 7 o'clock meetup. Meanwhile, Kyoko waits outside the rendezvous area where people move left to right minding their own business. She looks at her phone and sees the time being 6:48, only 12 more minutes to go before she would get to meet Tuma. However, there is one thing that we find out, and it's the fact that she arrived 2 hours and 10 minutes early. Well, no wonder she has nothing better to do at home. Kyoko fidgets with her phone and fingers, waiting patiently as well as impatiently for Tuma to come meet her, eyes filled with eagerness as sweat drips down her forehead. Tangled pink strands of hair fly with the blowing of the wind. Tuma meets up with Kyoko finally, and the two go to an izakaya. Kyoko asks what she could get since she is the lightweight and can't drink too much. The news that she is a lightweight is received as unexpected by Tuma, since he expected her to be more than just a lightweight according to her, well, body size. Nevertheless, he voices out his thoughts and tells her how he didn't expect her to be a light drinker, but rather a big drinker. Kyoko apologizes for not meeting his expectations, to which he tells her not to apologize, and she apologizes again for what she said earlier. The two stare at each other, and Tuma breaks the ice by asking her what's up, since she has been staring at him rather meekly. Picking up the confidence again, Kyoko asks him if she got wasted and loses consciousness, would he look after her? All the while, she slowly touches her chest, while simultaneously blushing. Taking it very casually, Tuma tells her he would not have any other choice, and would in fact take care of her, asking her to leave it to him to be there for her. Kyoko laughs embarrassingly and happily agrees to have drinks that night. Something doesn't feel right here for some reason. We are met by the sight of empty glasses clinking against each other, and mind you, these are not just a few glasses. Kyoko is seen unconscious, snoring to herself. Tuma realizes that she really was a light drinker and didn't expect her to go down in less than an hour as they just started drinking. Kyoko's tangled pink hair covers her sleeping face. Her arms wrapped around her stomach and her face burned a slight tone of red due to the effect of the drinks. Tuma looks at Kyoko's delicate body that is very much at peace, telling himself that she was truly enjoying drinking with him and even went all out, which has resulted in her falling asleep. Still, she looks really different, much more than he would have expected her to be. Her once thin, fragile body is now far bigger and bustier than he would have imagined. Drinking another glass of beer, Tuma's mind starts thinking of what had happened to his childhood friend that has resulted in her being this way. This is a completely different person. A shy, timid, and quiet person in personality, and her bodily figure has also changed, making her look somewhat attractive to Tuma. His mind starts assuming different scenarios of what could have happened to poor Kyoko, but he shakes these thoughts away. He pays for the drinks, reassuring himself that the thoughts that have crawled into his mind are not true at all, and thus moves towards Kyoko. He picks up her body that is without a doubt a lot heavier than he would have wanted. He tells himself to not pry anymore into her life, since it's none of his business, and rightly so, as he knows nothing of what she went through in her past and what happened to her that resulted in her being this way. Knowing that she has lived her life in whatever her past is, it isn't of any concern for him to know, and so diverting these thoughts in other directions, Tuma carries his childhood friend back to her home, as per his promise to her before they had started drinking. Tuma carries his friend, who was knocked out by the few drinks that she could take in less than an hour. While walking on the street, he could hear different people passing their unwanted comments on her and him. A boy and a girl are amazed that she's being lugged away home right in front of everyone in the open street. Another person comments on her nasty, messed up, tangled hair that is all over the place and makes her look like a bimbo. No one could imagine looking like her and leaving their house in such a state. One even goes as far as commenting on how it's good that she's a psycho chick, since her appearance and the way she's being carried by her so-called boyfriend won't affect her character, since it's already stooped so low. The most awful and heartbreaking comments are being passed by random strangers who know nothing about who the two are and what problems and issues they've faced in their life. All they know about is commenting and passing judgment on them. Tuma in his head tells them to shut up, anger rushing into his veins and sweat dripping down his chin. How could they so easily and happily pass judgment on a girl who could be going through so many problems in her life, and they haven't a clue about it? Sure, she was at a fragile point once in her past where she was on the verge of failing every test in school, but that's still not a good enough reason for them to treat her that way. Sadness and hurt fills Tuma's head, and he realizes another thing that makes him no different than the rest of him. Sadly, he also doesn't know much about Kyoko-kun, which makes him even worse since they were childhood friends and used to play with each other for years. But ever since he left, he completely forgot about everyone, about all of his friends, family, and that's why he sadly doesn't know much about Kyoko. This makes him feel very sad and lonely, as he carries his childhood friend slowly towards her home. Meanwhile, Kyoko, half awake and half in her senses, produces a weak but very happy and embarrassed smile, since she could never have imagined being carried by her childhood friend whom she really likes. Tears also trickle down her thin eyelids. Maybe it's hurt after listening to all those awful things said by the passerbys, or they are tears of happiness for what she is experiencing right now, which is far more important than anything in the world. Carrying Kyoko is no easy task, especially from all the way at the place they were drinking at to her home. Tuma decides to have a small stop near a bench and talks to himself, since he thought Kyoko was fast asleep, telling himself that now is the time for a little break. Kyoko starts talking after dozing off through their walk, and apologizes for being too heavy. Tuma is a bit embarrassed and shakes off the idea of her being too heavy and directly the topic of questioning if she was awake all along. Still a bit shaky from the effect of the drinks, Kyoko is sweaty and wobbly the whole way home, which she didn't do at all when she was carried. Tuma tells her not to worry so much and reminds her of his promise to her that he would take care of her, side by side being worried about her health, asking her if she's feeling better. Kyoko, with drunk-filled eyes, reassures him that she is feeling reasonably better, or at least that's what she thinks she feels. Positive that she isn't feeling 100% herself, he rushes to the nearest store to get her some water, leaving her by herself. Kyoko looks at Tuma with sad eyes, as he goes and returns back moments later with a bottle of water. He returns and hands her the bottle of water, telling her to take it and refresh herself. Kyoko thanks him with a soft voice. He tells her that they are very close to her place and asks if she has the strength to walk the rest of the way with him. Looks like carrying her all the way was more than enough for poor Tuma, and maybe the option of her walking looks more reasonable right now. Kyoko purses her lips, showing disapproval for the idea. Her face now turns a light shade of red as she continues to mumble to herself. Rather confused, a sweaty Tuma asks her what she's trying to say to him. Kyoko picks up the courage and finally says it, telling him she doesn't want to go home yet and if she could stay at his place for the night. Looks like the power of getting drunk makes you do and ask all sorts of things. But it seems she fully meant what she said and really did not want to go back to her house and instead would have preferred if she stayed the night with her childhood friend. We are taken back in time and get to see the past life of Tuma and Kyoko during their high school years together. Kyoko's loud voice can be heard miles away as she screams a greeting to Tuma. Tuma looks out his window and sees Kyoko. With a confused voice, asks her what's up. With a happy smile but a voice filled with a little annoyance, asks him what he means by what's up, and that it's summer vacation. Here we also get to see Kyoko not entering his house, and instead shouting from the driveway. Guess she hasn't changed much from that time, since she still doesn't enter his house. Eyes closed and a huge smile forming on her face, she carries a donut-shaped floaty on her arm and motions Tuma to go with her to the pool. Goggles on her neck, rosy cheeks, a tote bag on her arm, and an aura that just screams of happiness and positivity. The two make their way to the pool, and Kyoko tells the real reason why she wanted Tuma to come along with her. She actually wanted to go down by the river, but was warned by the elders that they were kids and could not go alone since it was too dangerous. Even though, according to her, she felt it to be perfectly fine. But we all know that her childish energy is just getting the better of her for now. Nonetheless, she sees the pool and without thinking twice, plunges into the pool with utter happiness and joy. A rather worried Tuma screams back at her, telling her to not rush and just jump into the pool. The elders would get mad at him too this way. This is the version of Kyoko that Tuma so perfectly remembers. Once middle school starts for them, the energetic Tuma is made to wear a skirt with her uniform, and boy does she look pissed at being made to wear it. Tuma sees her for the first time in a skirt and casually tells her that it doesn't suit her at all. Angry Kyoko looks at him with killer looks and tells him that she has zero control over this. Middle school has just started, and all she can do right now is only obey the rules, and that makes even tomboy girls like her dress up in skirts. However, she did manage to wear gym shorts underneath her flimsy skirt, and flashes her shorts by lifting her skirt in front of her childhood friend. A rather surprised Tuma tells her to not flip up her skirt and show him, since it's out of her manners and embarrassing as well. She still wishes she could at least wear pants underneath the skirt. Tuma laughs and tells her that she now looks like a full-fledged girl and chuckles. Kyoko screams back at him that he should be able to recognize her just by her face and not the clothing she wears. Swinging her bag up and down, she happily asks him what he has planned for the clubs and which one he's likely to join. Tuma, not being the sporty type, tells her that he would like to go for basketball or volleyball, which only makes her call his choice boring. We get to see another flashback into the two's past, where Tuma walks home on a dark, rainy day. Kyoko runs after him with her bag blocking the rain from getting her wet. She asks Tuma if she could share his umbrella until they get back home and scooches in with him. He tells her how they are now in high school and this just seems to be a bit embarrassing. To which she questions his modesty to care about being embarrassed or letting his friend get soaked in the rain. Kyoko realizes that they will be moving to different universities in spring, and that part still hasn't completely digested for her. An idea hits her, and she asks him, when was the last time they went out to get parfaits together? This idea is met by a smile from Tuma, who agrees with it, and they both tease each other about getting fat and not having the opportunity again like this once they go their separate ways. We are back in reality, and Tuma sees a hotel named Starbucks. He then looks at Kyoko, having an idea in mind of what to do now, since she didn't want to go back home. The Kyoko he once knew isn't the same anymore. Both her appearance and personality have changed, making her a completely different person now. Somewhere along the way, his childhood friend whom he loved so much has disappeared. A nagging feeling deep inside Tuma makes him think that. Tuma and Kyoko hold each other's hands intensely, the bed sheets creased by their bodies as the two spend the night at the hotel. The next morning, Tuma and Kyoko walk together back home. Tuma's mind is filled with multiple thoughts and he is unable to look straight and instead looks at Kyoko, making him bump headfirst into a sign. This makes Kyoko laugh, and he realizes that she was there all along watching him. Between fits of laughter, Kyoko asks what the heck he's doing, to which he embarrassingly tells her that he wasn't looking where he was going. The clock ticks past 3:30 a.m. It's the middle of the night, and Kyoko still can't sleep properly. She changes into her tracksuit and decides to go out and get some fresh air to clear her head. The night is dark, and only the streetlights light up the way. Kyoko jogs down the street. Panting immensely as she stops to rest, she cannot feel her legs anymore, even though back in high school, this was the path she used to take for her warm-up runs. How times have changed. She holds her legs and sits down, thinking how it's been so long since she went last for her run. Her stamina sure has gone down. It flashes before her mind how every day she looks at herself. She knows she can't redo her past. Whatever has happened has happened. How once she was the happy and energetic Kyoko, but the circumstances that came across her completely transformed her, and she wasn't as strong as she thought she would be. She tried to change, but nothing went like the way they thought it would. In the end, her parents decided to bring her back home, since she couldn't do it herself anymore. Clenching the sleeve of her tracksuit, she tells herself how despite her dark past and present state of mind, he didn't judge her, and didn't even ask anything about it. She recalls the time she spent with him in the hotel, their hands clutching to each other tight, not willing to let go. He was so kind to her, and so warm. She realizes that she has completely fallen for Tuma. Tuma lies on his bed. He used to think of Kyoko as a sister, but then it all changed when they both went and did that in the hotel. Well, that's life. You never know what could happen. This makes him feel very restless. And of course, it had to be a time like this when there is no sign of life from Kyoko. His phone lays silent on his bed. On the other end, Kyoko is asleep in her messed up room. Fast asleep, Kyoko wakes up to the ping sound of her phone's message and instantly gets up when she finds out it's Tuma who wants to meet and go shopping. Frantically getting ready, she jumps into the shower and looks for her clothes in her messed up drawer. She hasn't washed her usual clothes yet. How will she manage to meet him now? She finally gets to meet him and apologizes for making him wait so long. Tuma is speechless when he lays eyes on Kyoko, who wears a very beautiful dress, not like her usual clothes. He compliments her dress, which makes her smile and blush, and the two make their way to the mall. They go to Rion Mall, and Tuma tells her how it's been a few years since he was last here, which is the same case for Kyoko as well. Tuma decides to take a lap around the mall with her, and she happily agrees. They visit a shop, and Tuma remembers last month was her birthday, and despite being late, he decides to get her a present. Since everything was on sale, he got her a new wallet, but sadly it was a new item and no discount was applied. Defeated, Tuma still buys it for her without complaining. Smiling from ear to ear, Kyoko thanks him for it and even tells him how much she loves it. She uses it straight away, and while transferring her things from her old wallet to the new one, we get to see her being in a tough spot, since she doesn't have any money or cards, screaming the fact that she is unemployed. We can't wait to find out more about how things proceed with these two and what dark secrets lie in Kyoko's past that made her this way. Stay tuned to find out, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out.